Oh, hey there. Welcome to the Atlantic coast of Argentina. In about 2 weeks, this van behind me, our home, is either going to be shipped back to its new owner in North America or sold to someone here in South America. Yes, we still don't know exactly what is happening with the van. So before we send Betty off to her new owner, we figured that we would show you around our travel home and discuss some of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And this applies mainly to the Pan American Highway and how this van drove it. So, yeah, let's get started.
Hey guys, welcome to my crib. Welcome to the inside of Betty, our humble abode for the Pan American Highway. I wanted to get started by talking about the positives of our layout. So the first one is all of the storage space that we've got in here. It's been so great. We can easily fit all of our gear, all of our clothing, cooking supplies, and most importantly, a huge pantry of food and baking supplies. Along with cooking, we have tons of counter space, in my opinion, for a van. It's obviously not very much in comparison to a house, but for a van, this is a perfect amount of counter space for me to do all of the fun cooking things that I do. The higher roof was a huge bonus for me in particular. We installed a medium top about 3 years ago so that I could stand in the van. It's a little bit more important for me to be able to stand in the van because I'm doing all the cooking. Alex is mainly editing video seated, so it's not as important for him. However, it was pretty awful for him to have to live in this van so long term and not be able to stand. The reason why we went with the medium top, as most of you know, is to fit the van into a container. The other positive, I would say, is the swivel seat in the front of the van. So my passenger seat swivels, which not only opens up the space in an incredible amount, like as soon as we swivel that seat, it feels like the space opens up so much, but that's Alex's dedicated workspace, and he really needs a solid, consistent space to edit videos in, so that's been perfect for him. So onto the not so great. As I mentioned before, Alex can't stand. It's also quite difficult for him to move around in the van because he can't stand, because he has to kind of do this like head down thing. So since it's such a tight space and he can't stand, whenever Alex is up and moving around, he really takes up a lot of the available space, which isn't great. It's super nice that he's happy to sit in his, we call it his throne, the swivel seat, for so much of the time and edit. If things had been different and Alex wasn't happy or busy in that seat so much of the time, I think we would have had a bit bigger problem here, always competing for the space. But for me, like, it feels like I have a palace in here because basically everywhere from the cab on is mine. And one thing that we installed in the interior of the van that we didn't use, basically not even once, it's just been collecting dust, is our sink. Most people don't understand what we mean when we say we don't use a sink. I think that there maybe are two types of people in this world, sink people and not sink people. We have figured out well and truly that we are not sink people. When we do dishes, we just do, like, we call them camp dishes. So if we're using 2 plates and some cutlery, all we do is we put a bit of water in one of the plates and make it soapy, and then we wash the dishes with that. We've never once washed the dishes in the sink. I thought we would, but I realized super quickly that washing dishes in a sink uses so much more water. Like, I would say at least 4 times more water. Okay, let's move on to the walls and heating, walls, windows, heating and cooling, essentially. So we built this van in Canada, and we had the north in mind, the colder climates in mind while we were building it out. So our walls have 2 inches of rigid insulation behind them, And that has been absolutely wonderful in the cold weather. Like, we have almost not had any need for heating. It's just been a fun bonus to use the wood burning stove. But our body heat in the van in cold climates basically heats the space. And then that combined with our propane stove, like whenever I switch it on, if it's cold in the morning and I start making coffee, the inside of the van gets nice and toasty, and it stays that way as long as we don't open the door too much. So the insulation has been great in the cold, but having this much insulation in the warm climates, especially in humid climates, was absolutely brutal. The insulation and the wood basically turned the van into a sauna, and that, coupled with not having any AC in the cab, was a huge mistake. In the heat, what we would rely on was the ventilation in the van. So we've got 3 windows, the 2 windows beside the bed, a window on the sliding door, as well as our max air fan. And that circulates the air quite well, but in those hot and humid climates where the air that's being circulated is just as hot as the stagnant air in the van, it was just way too hot in here. On the windows, we're super happy we went with as many windows as we possibly could. It brings in a lot of natural light and also the ventilation, so we're stoked with that. If they could have been bigger, we would have gone bigger, but with the curvature of the van, this is as good as we can do. Before we left on the trip, we were anticipating bugs in especially southern Mexico, Central America, mosquitoes, what are those, no-see-ums, and I hate bugs. They eat me up, and I am just in a constant state of itchiness. So we tried to fashion some homemade bug screens. They had to be homemade because of the openings on the van. So we have a sliding door, which is not ideal. I bought this van before I met Alex back in 2019. And I looked high and low in Vancouver for a van that had doors that open like this. And I just couldn't find it. So I just thought, oh, well, whatever. And I got the sliding door. The reason why I didn't want to start a sliding door was because there is opportunity for storage on the double doors that open. I didn't realize that the sliding door just causes more problems than that. So one is with the bug netting. It's almost impossible to build a bug net around the sliding mechanism because the sliding mechanism comes right inside the van. It's not on the outside. So that's one downside. It also lets out a lot of heat in cold climates because it obviously has to open all the way each time it opens. And then the other thing that we have noticed with just the length of this trip is that the sliding mechanism is starting to wear out. Alex has had to fix it a couple of times. It's still fine, but yeah. The more little pieces in a van we've realized cause more and more issues. Okay, so I touched on it a little bit, but I'll talk about our heating solutions that we installed. So we have our wood burning fireplace, which has been so fun to have. It's almost everybody's favorite feature of the van when they come in and take a look inside. We love using it for the ambiance that it creates in the van and obviously how quickly it heats the van. In this small of a space, I'm not 100% sure it's totally necessary or smart. It's pretty heavy. It rattles around when we're on gravel roads, and it's just a more labor-intensive form of heating. Like, we have to build the fire, get it going, and then maintain it. So it's wonderful when we're just sitting in the van in a super cold place and we have the time to dedicate to keeping the little wood fire going, and it's free. We love that it's free, but yeah, it's just a fun bonus, and I wouldn't say it's super high on the effective list. Because we knew that we wouldn't want to build fires constantly, we also installed a propane heater, and I don't think we've used it one time on the Pan American Highway. We didn't use it up north, and we didn't use it down south. One, like we haven't really been that cold to need it. Alex and I are like pretty happy to put on a pair of slippers and sweatpants and sweatshirts and just exist in the van. Like I said, the insulation is really good. So once we get it warm in here or after a drive day, it stays really warm in here for a long time. And then the other thing is that as soon as we crossed into Mexico, filling propane became kind of a question mark for us. So we've always been kind of cognizant of like the propane consumption. And since I'm cooking all the time and baking cakes and stuff, I personally kind of just wanted to save the propane. When we did install the propane heater, we were traveling through the US and we used it quite a bit, and we found that our propane consumption like significantly increased when we used it. So especially being, you know, down here where like in Chile, for instance, it's almost impossible to fill propane. There's like a few places in the country where some guy in his backyard will do it the dangerous way. But yeah, it's illegal to fill foreign propane bottles in Chile. So yeah, it's just been top of mind to reserve our propane, so we haven't used the propane heater. Okay, so last thing that I want to talk about are the aesthetics in here. I absolutely love how the interior of the van looks. It's so like cozy cabin, like sailboat vibes in here. And every time somebody comes in, they love it as well. It's just so warm and it has so much character with the birch plywood and all of our maple accents, as well as the driftwood handles. Totally am in love with the way it turned out, and it's like the perfect place to live. Like I feel so at home in the van. However, it's so heavy. We didn't really realize how heavy it was until obviously we weighed the van after we were all done. So yeah, the weight of the interior build really got away from us, and for just your regular van life van, it would be totally fine. But since we've been putting this van through its paces, overlanding, doing like all the 4x4 overlanding routes, doing so much at high elevation, the weight has been definitely our pain point, like our major pain point. So if weight is a consideration for you, if you want to get out there and do off-road routes and that sort of thing, definitely don't go all plywood. We would definitely recommend figuring out some other solution.
All right, so we have a fairly robust electrical system in the van. We have 280 amp hours of lithium iron phosphate battery, 330 watts of solar, 40 amp DC-DC charger, 1500 watt inverter charger. And honestly, the electrical system has been like fantastic throughout the entire trip. We have never once run out of battery, except for when we were way up north and our alternator was failing and there was no sun. One thing we didn't actually use, which I was kind of surprised about, is we have an inverter charger. It's a 1500 watt, and we never used the shore power function, not once. So I don't know if going that route, if I would really think about doing that again. I kind of just had it as like a bonus emergency thing if we needed to charge. I would say the 330 watts, the 40 amp DC-DC, and the 280 amp hours of storage was more than we needed, and like totally fantastic, worked great. Big win there. All right, now I'm going to talk about some of the exterior aspects of Betty, and we're going to start with the paint. If you really want a lot of people in South America stroking the side of your vehicle, paint your vehicle with Raptor liner. It is actually hilarious. So many times we would be in traffic and there'd be a guy on a motorbike, you know, just doing this. I'd be sitting in the front of the van. Meg was out somewhere and people would just come out of nowhere and stroke the van. Kind of funny. I painted the exterior of the van with Raptor liner, and it was both a good and a bad decision. It's fairly inexpensive if you can do it yourself, which I did. I painted this van, I think over 2 or 3 days, and it cost me like, I don't know, between $800 and maybe $1,300. I think I used 13 bottles of Raptor liner. A few people have asked me that in the past, but I did all the work myself, and I saved a lot of money because a paint job from professionals, it costs maybe $5,000. Don't quote me on that. The reason we painted the van is because we had that typical Chevy issue where all the paint is peeling off. It's a selection of years in the white paint. They did something with the primer, really doesn't do well. And we had to paint the van because it was just going to turn green primer as all of the paint was stripped off. I would say that the paint is super strong. It has really honestly held up to so much. We got hit by a dirt bike and it held up. We smacked into so many trees, it held up. Rubbed against rocks, it held up. So yeah, the paint is fantastic. I do have a few qualms with it though. This stuff, it doesn't clean very well, especially if you have a light color. Sometimes getting the dirt off is a real challenge. If you get any kind of oil, I think it kind of absorbs it. We have had a case where Meg had to throw hot oil out the side door and she managed to get it on the van. And I don't think the marks have come off yet. This paint collects and holds dirt, which I'm not a fan of. Also, if you don't do the prep perfectly, it does chip because it's pretty brittle. In some places, so if you don't do it right or you add too much hardener or something, it will chip, which you can see on the van in a few different places. That's what I've got to say about Raptor liner, but it is incredible stuff and it will hold up to a lot of abuse. All right, let's talk a minute about armor on the front of your vehicle. So I built this bumper, not because we're hardcore off-roading or anything like that, but because I wanted to be able to hold a winch and I like an aesthetically pleasing vehicle. But saying that, we did actually use it. You'll see right here, for instance, there's paint scraped off of the corner of this corner. And that was from a post in Mexico that I did not see. We've backed into stuff before, and I was always happy that I had a piece of steel on the front and the back of the vehicle. As well, if you're going to be doing side missions on the Pan Am, make sure you have a winch. As if you guys have been following along with us, you'll know that we put this winch to good use. And it wasn't just to recover ourselves, it was also to recover others. So if you want to be a good Samaritan, bring a winch with you. If you want to be able to recover yourself, bring a winch with you. This has been highly valuable in times of need. Winch and bumper, big win. Off-road lights, not so much. We actually got pulled over in Honduras and Argentina for having off-road lights on our vehicle, and it turns out in some countries they're not allowed. And I'm sure that there's other countries that don't allow them as well. We rarely use these, honestly. Really more in the dust, just to make sure that people could see us. Rarely at night, because we rarely ever drive at night. I would say maybe don't spend the money on off-road lights, and if you do, just make sure that you have blackout coverings for them. Otherwise, there's a likelihood that you will be pulled over and ticketed for having off-road lights. You've been warned. I've only got a little bit to say about the tire choice we made. Empties were the way to go for us. A few things. Having a tire that is really, really tough is great on the Pan Am because honestly, tires take a shit kicking. If it's not super hot pavement in Central America, then it's desert environments or potholes or any of the sharp edges that you'll find on city streets and stuff like that. Starting the Pan Am with a tire that has a really tall lug is great because, of course, as you go through Central America where it gets really hot, your tire wear kind of speeds up for a while. We saw a significant tire wear throughout Central America. So just like starting with a lot higher of a tread will actually mean that you have some left when you get to the bottom. As you can see, having like a 10-ply sidewall and a 3-ply upper cap is really great because there are lots of sharp things. Having these like nice big lugs and thick sidewalls have been great because we have literally driven thousands of kilometers with our tires aired down to like 10 15 psi. So having lots of protection here has been fantastic. So overall, mud terrains, big win. Do suggest if you're a two-wheel drive vehicle and you'd like to get out there. So yeah, mud terrain tires. Excellent. All right, one of the things I want to address as well is the lift that we put in here, which was a 3-inch spindle lift by Weldtech Designs, as well as a lift spring in the back that has like a 5,000 pound load capacity. Massive win. Hands down, such a great modification on the van, just having the clearance, be able to put on bigger tires was so great. All right, another big win, but it does have some uglies to it, is our storage box on the back. Now this is fantastic for keeping our gas, all of our lubricants and oils and stuff like that in here and out of the van. Big win, like big win. However, it's invisible to me in the van. I can't see it at all, and it made backing up in small spaces really challenging. And it was really stupid of me to not put a backup camera on the back of this van. If you're gonna do something like this, make sure to put a backup camera so you can actually see the dang thing. Having storage on the outside of your van that stores your gas and your lubricants and some of your recovery gear, totally suggest it. Just make sure you can see it. All right, so we got a 4.8 liter LS or Vortec under the hood of this van. And I would say that, knowing what I know now, the LS is probably not the best overland engine. I would say a few more sensors than I like, not as great fuel mileage as I would like. But that being said, I still think it's a fantastic engine. Lots of people love the LS series of engines for a good reason, because they're really reliable, they're easy to work on, and they make a boatload of power. That being said, I probably would have put a 6 liter in front of this 9,000 pound van. It would have made our lives so much easier, and it definitely would have had a transfer case. The transmission in Betty is a 4L80E, which, if you know anything about cars, is kind of a legendary transmission. 4-speed automatic, big casing and big components and stuff like that, which makes it kind of clunky and really reliable. I can attest, this transmission is nearly bulletproof. Now, that being said, we did roast 4th gear, and that was my fault. I do not know enough about automatic transmissions, and I should have put an auxiliary cooler on the front of the van long before we made it to Central America, where it got really hot and really steep, and we were trying to climb stupid steep hills in a 9,000 pound van in like 35 degrees. That being said, we're here, we're still driving. We've been driving without 4th gear for the past 10 months. We've done probably 12,000 kilometers without 4th gear and just driving around in 3rd everywhere. It's been shifting smooth through all 3 gears, and yeah, it's held up. So I would say 4L80E, big win. Just make sure to keep it cool. That was a big loss on my part. All right, let's talk about rear axle. This van came from the factory with a one-off variant of the Dana 60. It was a semi-float axle, which it's a really strong axle in its own right, but I knew that I was going to be putting a boatload of weight on this van, so I decided to upgrade the rear axle to a full-floating Dana 70 Super. It has a 7,500 pound load capacity. I got it out of the back of a Duramax Express that I found in a wrecking yard in Phoenix, Arizona. We re-geared the diff to 410s to account for the bigger tires, and it has a power lock LSD in the back. And it has honestly been fantastic. I just wanted to make sure that I had a component that is easier to work on. These full floating axles, you can take the axle shaft out right here and do maintenance on the bearings if you need to. If you broke an axle shaft, you could just take it out and put a cover on this and then drive around still. Yeah, I just wanted like heavy duty parts to account for all of the weight that we had on this van. The Power Lock LSD has been so good. We've actually felt it lock up so many times and get us out of little sticky situations. Overall, just a massive win. As well, we put big, huge progressive leaf springs in the back, which really helped kind of tame the rear end and account again for the extra weight that we put on this van. They're 5,000 pound load capacity, so totally mint, totally rad, big win. All right, well, that's pretty much it for this video. This is the last you're gonna see of this van, most likely. From here, she's gonna go off to her new owner and live a new life. She's been good, right?
We love you, Betty.
We love her, Betty, and we're gonna miss her. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Bye.